Hi, I'm Owen, the host of the Australian Finance Podcast. This podcast is proudly sponsored by BetaShares, one of the leading providers of ETFs here in Australia. Serving thousands of financial advisors and over 1 million investors, BetaShares manages tens of billions of dollars on behalf of investors right across the country. I'm proud to partner with BetaShares on the Australian Finance Podcast, Australia's premier financial podcast, because there is great alignment in the long-term philosophy shared by both businesses. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Australian Finance Podcast. Gemma Mitchell, welcome to this episode of the Australian Finance Podcast. How you doing?
Finance, I'm doing great. Thank you. Good to be here. How is your week going?
Good. As you know, because we recently launched our financial planning business, our own one at Rask, and that's been really busy. But I think normally when we do podcasts or we do community stuff, our courses, social media, whatever, there's a lot of time spent in front of a camera, and more I'm getting exposed to people in the community. And this week we've been doing a lot of one-on-one goal setting with the financial advisors and everyone that's signed up for financial advice. And I know you do this all the time, but for me, it's like a real novelty. And I actually just love hearing about all of that stuff. And just a moment ago before we hit record, I was chatting to a woman from Brisbane who recently went through a separation and is thinking about, well, what do I do? She's got kids. And it was really, really reassuring after the first 45 minutes to be she was like, this has been great. I feel really confident. And it's just from a chat about money, right? So to be able to have those, we've had a lot this week, or people from all walks of life, has just been really, really lovely. So,
because a lot of the time your conversations, they're always about finance and helping people, but they're one way. So you don't get in real time people's relief and we get lots of positive feedback about how much, the conversations help. But yeah, seeing clients in person, you would actually see the relief and the hope that they see and they get out of an appointment with an advisor.
Yeah, well, see, we used to, and we still want to do more of these, is our big events and stuff around Australia. And I used to come away from those so recharged. It was like being around the community and everyone and just having fun, really.
Yeah.
It was like a big recharge of my batteries. And then my battery would slowly go down over the next few months until the next event. And then it would go down again and then it'd be recharged again. And so now, even though I don't get to do as much of it because of everything that goes on, I still get to drop into a lot of the calls and the chats that people have. And yeah, it's just really lovely. So that's been really uplifting. What's been really scary for me is today, after this recording, actually, we're probably going to sign the biggest financial commitment I've ever signed in my life, even potentially bigger than our mortgage, which is we're moving into a new office in Melbourne. And it's a multi-year lease. And I've always said for people that listen to us on our business podcast that if there's one thing that will kill you in business, it's those big leases, whether it's equipment, vehicles, or in this case, it's an office. So, yeah, it's made me nervous. I don't know if you've ever been through something like that, where you feel nervous about having to do a big financial commitment, maybe buying a house or something. But for me,
absolutely. Yeah.
It's been I've been sitting on the empty lease document for over 2 weeks now, just kind of worrying myself awake every night.
Yeah, that's really tough. But if you think about it, you've been planning for this a long time. You have a budget. You've looked at lots and lots of different options. So you've done all of the work, but it is still completely natural and common to still have these hesitations with any of our financial decisions. And, I bet that you'll look back in 5-10 years and be like, oh, imagine, remember how nervous I was about that big thing? And it'll just be like a blip on the Rask kind of journey.
Well, I hope you're right. And I always think about whenever I make an investment, whether it's money or an overseas trip or whatever the case may be, I always think if there's something like that, how can you de-risk it for yourself? And fortunately, we're going to have some really great people move into the space with us in Melbourne, and it's going to be a really kind of vibrant, fun, more like a co-working space. It just happens to be our name on the lease, which will be the scary part. But super excited for that. So we'll be doing more in-person podcasts, lots of different kind of creative stuff, which is really exciting. But hey, that's been my week. So what's been making news in your world?
Well, nothing keeping me up at night like that, which is nice. I've had a pretty low-key week. Lots of client calls, which exactly like you, I just get such a buzz out of. So client calls have been great. And that's pretty much it. I've been a bit sick, so I've been keeping pretty quiet. I voted this week, so I voted early. Do you vote early?
I like to, yeah, but I've realized that they now ask questions. I was like, I don't know.
This is what I was going to ask. So I get so nervous because I always think I'm going to get grilled, like, why am I eligible? But they only just want a yes or no. But I get so nervous that I have to have this whole backstory on why I'm eligible, and it just feels like I'm doing the wrong thing. But I did vote, and I voted early. But yeah, the nervousness of being asked, are you eligible? It's not why. You don't have to have a reason. You just have to say yes confidently.
Yes, and not to put too much of a time stamp on this, we actually are recording this a week in advance because you and I are getting ready to go at the time of this recording to Sydney next week. So by the time people listen to this, you and I are going to be in Sydney, and we're going to know who the new Prime Minister is and the government. If there is a new Prime Minister, so time warp on that.
Yes.
But yeah, we're getting ready to go and record in Sydney. And we've got some amazing guests like Mel Brown, none other than Mel Brown. We've got Queenie 10, Invest with Queenie. We've got some big fund managers, June Bay, who's like probably the most recognizable fund manager in Australia right now. She's incredible. Turns out she taught herself English in 6 months. And like just like amazing. And then we've got the CEO of car sales, like so many
Very cool stuff.
Conversations coming up. You did have a question here in the notes though, or it was more like a fun thing, and I'm curious.
Yeah, I have a question for you. So I've been seeing this all over my social media, and it got me thinking. What was a status symbol, like a wealth status symbol when you were young? Like, do you have anything that you kind of think of that? Because I was seeing an ad for Viennetta ice cream. So Viennetta ice cream is like a log of like vanilla ice cream. It's got really thin chocolate throughout it. And I just remember that being like the epitome of wealth when I was young. Like if your parents or you went to a friend's house, and they had Viennetta, they were obviously loaded. So I was just thinking back, like, I wonder what it is in like kids' eyes today. But for me, it was Viennetta or having a staircase. So if you had like a staircase at your house, you must have been loaded, or a pool. That was.
Oh, pool, definitely. I think pool even today is like a sign of wealth, right? Unless
I live in Queensland, so everyone has a pool.
You're in Queensland, but in Victoria, because you can use it for like 5 months of the year. That's a real luxury. There were so many things back in the day, but I think, you and I were just chatting. I think nowadays, the sign of wealth is like a holiday house, to be honest. I think they were more commonplace back in the day. We never had one, obviously. Even just going on holidays, we didn't really do. But I remember when I'd chat to kids and they would have a holiday house, I'd be like, wow, like that's incredible that you have another place that you could go to.
Yeah.
That was a big thing. And I think that's probably nowadays even more the case, right? Like, because it's like there's so many taxes on a second home and investment property, like vacancy tax, Airbnb tax, like there's just so many different things. Yeah, I don't know. What would be the equivalent of something like that now? Would just like Viennetta? No, I don't know anyone that eats Viennetta nowadays. But
I'm probably going to go buy one today so I can just feel rich tonight after I've had my frozen meal. I'll just
yeah, true.
But yeah, we can get people to write in or find us on Instagram and put it in. I might put a poll up and ask in there. So follow us on there and send me in what you think the epitome of wealth was when you were a child.
We're very fortunate that our community has some people that are very have done very well for themselves. And I remember I was catching up with a bloke recently, but we walked out of this pub in Sydney and I was like, oh, you should have come down to the Airbnb. We could have just, had a coffee or a beer just at the Airbnb. He's like, oh yeah, no, these are my Airbnbs right here. And he's pointed to this thing opposite. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, these there was 20 apartments in this building. He's like, yeah, I own this. And I was like,
I own all of this.
what? You don't have a moment where you're just like, what?
Yeah.
So some people just have different lives and you're just like, that's great.
Yes.
I love that for you, but I just never would have entered my worldview. So I'm so happy for you. But hey, we've got a bunch of questions that we do want to get through. There's a few questions here about super funds being fined, ETFs, getting started with kids, and also flipping houses. So that's all covered in today's podcast. If you do have a question for us, please write in. There's a link in your podcast player on YouTube in the description, and it just says ask a question, select the Australian Finance Podcast, and Gemma and I will be onto it. You can also use that to just send us your what are the signs of wealth for next week's episode. We would love to hear how those maybe evolved throughout your lifetime. So we do have these questions. General advice only applies. We don't know your needs, goals, or objectives. So none of the information is personalized to you. If you want personalized advice, you'll have to see a financial planner, and you'll be able to verify a financial planner on the ASIC website. It's asic.gov.au. That's how you verify that a financial planner is actually allowed to give you one-on-one advice in Australia. And if you have any other questions or misunderstandings, just head to the Rask website, rask.com.au/FSG. That explains what we can and can't say and how you can interpret the information. So the first question comes from as in,
yeah.
yes.
As in scared.
Yes. And they recently heard a bit about different super funds being fined millions of dollars by ASIC for different reasons. Who pays this fine? That's a really good question. And Gemma, you're the insurance expert. You're the super expert around here. What is the answer to this question and what is going on?
This is a great question. And this happens all of the time. Like if we look back in history, there are some huge fines in the millions, well, tens of millions of dollars that have been dished out by ASIC to different super funds over the years. So very importantly, these are fines for how the super fund has acted, not anything to do with the actual members. So their act might not have been in the best interest of the members, but the members haven't done anything wrong. So it doesn't come out of their superannuation, out of their retirement savings, out of their returns. It doesn't affect the members in a monetary way. It might affect their confidence, but yes, it's definitely not affecting them in a monetary way to pay these fines. So how they might be paid is businesses have to have like a professional indemnity, like a liability kind of insurance. So think of it like if someone broke into your house, home and contents, like that kind of stuff, like how you would have a insurance policy for crashing into somebody else, having an accident, they would have a similar type of insurance for different things. Now, depending on what they're getting fined for, their insurance company might cover it or they might not. If they've done the wrong thing, they might not be covered. So this actually comes out of the super fund as a company's money. So the trustee is a business, really, and it would come out of their assets. So they're still making a profit for managing your super, so it comes out of their side of it. Would you agree? How would you explain it any differently?
No, that makes sense. I think the big thing to remember is just that it doesn't affect you. Like Australian Super got fined recently. I remember
Yeah, 27 mil just recently. And that was because they had duplicated members' accounts. So members had paid double fees. And they hadn't picked it up or done anything about it early enough. So they refunded the members' fees. They got their money back, but ASIC still fined Australian Super for not doing what was in the best interest of the clients, not sorting it out quickly enough.
Yeah, so this is from the ASIC news release. It said between 2013 and 2023, approximately 90,700 Australian super members had multiple accounts that should have been merged. These members incurred approximately $69 million of losses through multiple admin fees, insurance, and lost investment earnings. All affected members have been remediated, so they've all been fixed up. But also, on top of that, thank you very much, says ASIC, that's $27 million fine for you. So the speeding ticket goes to Australian Super as a business or organisation, not the individual members. They've all been fixed up, which is great.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's like some other examples are greenwashing. So Active Super got fined a bit over $10 million this year as well for, not just not having the proper disclosures and things on what they're actually investing in. So this happens all of the time. And yes, it shakes our confidence with our actual fund managing our money and super in general, but it doesn't come out of your super balance or your returns. This fine is on the company itself.
That's good. That's reassuring for most people. And, we often bang on about how the banks are doing all the wrong things and da-da-da-da-da-da, and some of the big super funds. But you got to remember, these big institutions often serve millions of customers. And if they get even 1% of that wrong, it affects so many people. But the key thing I've always thought is that, yes, we've got to hold them accountable, but it's actually good that we have a few really strong financial companies in the world, because if they do get fined, they can pay the bill. Whereas if it was a bunch of small little companies that are making big mistakes, they might not be able to fix their customers up. So that's really, really important. Matt wrote in. Matt says, "Hi, I recently started investing at 18 and have started with VAS, VGS, and VAF, so 3 Vanguard ETFs. He says, I have noticed that the first dividends I will get will fall after June 30th. Does this mean I do not have to declare anything on my tax this financial year, as I have only bought and not sold any? Hope this makes sense. Thank you so much for your podcasts. They have been very informative." Now, we are assuming that Matt here has held these, like he's just started, we're recording this in May, has just started in the last few months, Jem. Maybe this is quite an interesting one because we're coming into tax year. You will pay tax, just everyone listening to this and watching this, you will pay tax on your investments, so shares and ETFs, in the financial year, so June 30th. That's the way the tax year works in Australia. It's not the same as the calendar year. That's different. And overseas, they have different tax years. Like in England, for example, I think it's like April something. So
yeah, so confusing.
Yeah. So in Australia, June 30th, you do pay tax on your investments. So it's good to keep records. Would this person, what do you say for this type of person?
Yeah. So any taxable income that, as you were saying, from 1st of July to 30th of June, the next financial year, is going to be included. So if you had sold shares and they'd made a profit that increased in value, or if you had any dividends payments to you, or they were reinvested, even if you physically didn't get the money, that would all count as income. That would be added in your tax, like on top of your salary type thing, and your tax would be sorted. So this person, based on the limited information that they've given us, I don't think there'll be any tax for that'll be included for these particular shares. They haven't sold anything and they haven't got a dividend payment. They haven't held them long enough. So you'll get like all of the records regardless, and you'll include them in there, but I would assume they're going to be nils.
Yeah, so this is interesting because it actually brings up an important point that people should remember between the differences between ETFs and shares. So when you own an individual share like Plumbank or BHP, you only pay tax on the cash that actually hits your bank account, or when you sell for a profit in your brokerage account. But with ETFs, because of the way that they're constructed, the way what's inside it, there's constantly buying and selling going on inside of the ETF. And as an investor in that ETF, you may actually incur certain different types of income or losses without even realizing it, because you're just like, oh, I haven't got anything in my bank account. Why would I be taxed? So it's really important that you wait to do your tax return until you get what's called your annual member statement or annual tax statement or something like that. And that typically doesn't come for you until like late July or August each year. And so what happens is people are like, well, I want to do my tax return now. Everyone's getting tax returns. Unfortunately, as investors, sometimes we do need to wait because we do need to get that statement. Now, in this instance, if they're new to investing, they've probably got a smaller balance, they've probably, not actually bought or sold, then yeah, it might not be that big of a deal, but there's a chance that there might be something on that tax statement that you need to record. One of the things that people get spooked about, and hopefully we can just get in front of this, is sometimes on July 1st every year, your ETF falls pretty dramatically in price. So you might log into your brokerage account on July 1st and see, why is my ETF down 5%? That doesn't make any sense to me, right? And you might be like, why is that happening? And the reason that that happens is because of exactly what I just mentioned, is that inside the ETF itself, it's constantly buying and selling. And you as an investor in that ETF, you need to pay the tax that has happened inside. So what does the ETF do? It's sent some money back out to you that is yours to pay. And so that's why the actual value of the ETF falls, because it adjusts for what's going to be taxed. Basically, what's going to be sent to you is what we call a distribution. So if you do see your ETF fall on July 1st, a big part of that may be because of the tax implications that are coming to you. So keep that in the back of your mind. It's not like you've lost money. It just means that instead of the money being in the ETF, it's coming to you and it's just going to take a few weeks to hit your bank account. That's all the big difference is there. So keep that in the back of your mind. But it's a really good question. Just keep good records. You will get that statement from each ETF that you own. The next question is kind of related to this in that it's about investing in ETFs. Is a really good question. It's from Robags. Robags says, I would like to start an investment portfolio for my niece who has just turned 18. That's a great gift, isn't it? Is an ETF investment recommended? Now, we have to be careful. We don't necessarily recommend things for everyone on the show, but we do have a bias towards ETFs, I think it's fair to say, because they are pretty easy for people to get started. Gemma, what do you think?
So like anything financial advisors, we always say it depends. But I was going to kind of go a step back and kind of be like, oh, is this going to be in her name because she's 18 and can hold the shares? Is it going to be in yours? I was just kind of like, oh, there's probably a lot of things to think about before you're actually thinking about the actual ETF. But assuming you've got all of that sorted, and if it's going to be in her name under her tax file number, she knows the responsibilities and things that she's going to have, all good. But yeah, like an ETF, something diversified, but just talking to her, maybe if she's going to be involved on how much management and things they're going to need. But yeah, an ETF can be like a really simple way to get diversification with just one actual share. But it so depends on, yeah, like how often you're going to be adding money to it as well. And what are you going to be starting with it? That type of stuff.
I'm going to play a bit of devil's advocate here for a second. I'm going to say don't use an ETF. This is me just playing devil's advocate, right? So I think, yes, ETFs are great. That's what we invest in at Rask. But if the purpose of this is to teach her about money and about investing, I haven't ever met some 18-year-old or some kid that's like, oh God, I can't believe that Vanguard ETF. So fun to learn about. Like no one has ever been like, oh, that's kind of really cool. So instead, if this is a learning tool, do not use an ETF. Like if your only purpose of doing this is to try and get her to discover the world of finance, go and pick a company, like go and pick a share, or let her pick from like 5 that you've sorted for her. Why? Because it'll be so much more relatable to her. You'll be able to say, well, here's, I don't know, I'm making stereotypes. Let's say, here's Nike, here's LMBH, here's Google, here's Apple, and here's Telstra. I don't know, just some random collection, right? It's not about whether or not it's going to be a good financial investment. What you're trying to pass on to her is actually an education.
Learning and the assessment.
Exactly. So if like you think, I'm actually doing this for the learning, not for the money, then that's great. Better still, do both. Do an ETF and do a share.
Yeah, and that could be like your core, like how we talk about a core and a satellite approach. I actually have a friend who does this with his 11-year-old son. Like I was like, why isn't my 11-year-old into shares? But they will look at different shops and businesses, and the son will then go check if they're ASX listed or whatever, and then they might buy, and it's just a fun thing because yeah, it would be super boring just to be like, I'm as an 11-year-old just putting money into an ETF like I'm making my kids do. But yeah, so that's how they do it.
It's kind of like a savings account. Like I remember when I used to have I'm old enough to remember that when I used to have the school savings account, like you get like the little notepad that kind of looks, not a notepad, it's like a little booklet. It looks like a passport.
It looks like a checkbook. Oh yeah, passbooks were a thing too. Yep.
And it would have like how much, like I put $2 in today and you'd go up to the school office and you'd put your money in and you'd see it grow. Like that was cool because it was kind of tangible. At the same time, I didn't really care, right? I was like, oh, money, that's great. But I think there's a risk that parents, grandparents and aunties, uncles, everyone becomes not interested in finance because it's so boring now, which is great because we know that boring investing does work, but I don't think it works for that spark of imagination for kids. So I would suggest, like, I'll give you a good example of this, what I did with my sister who's 14. We have Vanguard VAS for her inside Pearl. I think she's got like $800 in there. She saved up at least half of that. I put some money in every now and again. So she's got the Vanguard VAS ETF, same as the previous question to him. But then in her Raise account, so I've got a Raise account that's got a kids account and it's so easy to use. Oh, by the way, Pearl's a sponsor of the show, just for disclosure. They don't know we're talking about this, but just so everyone knows. But inside Raise, I was chatting, she came down over school holidays and I was, we're going over her Raise portfolio. It's got like $400 in it. And I was like, you've got your ETF over there. Pretty whatever. She was pretty impressed at how much it had gone up, by the way. But inside of Raise, you can, for an extra $1 or something, you can have what they call the Plus portfolio, which is just basically you can pick from stocks. But there's like 50 stocks. They're all blue chips. They're all pretty whatever. And I said, you've got $300. Go through that list. And as she was going through, I was like, oh, do you know that company? Do you know that company? Have you heard of BHP? Do you know, obviously she knows Woolworths, but Coles. And sorry for Jenna to say this in public, but of all like the 50 or 80 stocks that are in there, you'll never guess what she picked. I was like, I didn't think this would be the one that she picked. She picked Coles.
Oh.
And I said, do you like to shop at Coles? She's like, no, I prefer Woolworths. And I was like, well, okay. That doesn't really make sense, but just go Coles. So she's put all of her $300 in Coles. But the critical difference is she's not going to be interested about Vanguard, but she will be interested about Coles now. And then every time she goes to Coles, hopefully she remembers that she owns shares in that thing.
And she stops shopping at Woolworths and she goes to Coles.
See you later, Woolworths. And she tells her dad, hey, we're going to Coles. But every time that she does that, it's a reinforcement of the message that she's an investor and this is how a business works and she can own part of it. Where she just can't do that with Vanguard.
With them.
So,
yeah. I think that's a good tip.
Yeah. Final question comes from Jacob. I'm in a dilemma. And this is quite an interesting one. It's for property people, but also anyone that's seen those shows on television. Our plan is to flip the houses we live in by renovating while we live. But we are also paying extra on our mortgage. My dilemma is spending the quote-unquote extra money on paying down the loan versus spending it on renovations. What do you think? So this is a great question because I think a lot of those TV shows have kind of romanticized the idea of let's just go in, whack on a nail bout, new bathroom in 24 hours, boom, watch us sell it. But it's not always like that. So what do you think, Jamie? You own a few properties nowadays.
Yeah, well, my ex-husband was a builder. So this was very much our strategy: buy houses, live in them, do them up and get rid of them. A true flip, a true housing flip in that sense is more you buy it to flip it. It's not your home that you're just chipping away and adding value. So the language, I guess, is important for different reasons. But yeah, our strategy was we lived in the home that we could afford and then we made it into the home we wanted, eventually would move on. So I totally get that. I think here there's two ways that you make money that you can make. There's lots of ways, but there's two main ways that you make money with property. It increases in value, and you paid down the loan, say, like, and so you've got some extra there. You've paid off the loan, and now you can sell the property, or you've added a lot of value, and so it was going to increase with the market anyway, but you've added more value, and you may not have paid down the loan. You may have actually even gone into more debt, like a renovation loan or something, but it's gone up with the general market, and it's gone up with the improvements that you've done more than what you've put into it. So yeah, you need to be, if you're going to renovate this home, you need to be okay with spending money because it's going to cost you to do it. But what I would say is a true flipping strategy is a really short-term hold. You get in there, you renovate it, but it's risky because you're buying and selling in the same market. So, all the houses might have gone up in that same time. And did you actually put enough capital improvements into it for what you put? Also, if you are going to repeatedly what we call flip houses, renovate them, make a profit, and you're living in them, the ATO is pretty much onto that, because when you live in a home, it's generally exempt from capital gains tax, whereas it's an investment to make you money, it's taxable. So the ATO kind of does look for that repeatedly changing houses for a profit. They're pretty much onto that. Yeah. So I'd just be considering it that way. But from somebody who has renovated houses, a lot of houses in my time, it got to the point where me and my ex-husband had to sit down and go, do we want it? We want to be house flippers. We love it. But can we be bothered anymore? We were like, we're over it. And we then changed our property strategy to buy and hold, buy new, never lived in. It broke his heart to not be the person adding the value and stuff, until he realized he didn't have to put the nail bag on, and we had the builder's warranty from the other guys and all that kind of stuff. So we were very much on the property flip when younger kid, didn't have kids, had the energy. And then we went, nah, we're over this. We don't want to live in this reno mess anymore and all that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, I guess the answer is you need to, if you're going to renovate and add value, it's going to cost you money. You need to be okay with either taking on debt or spending your surplus to do that, if that's going to be your strategy. There's no way around it.
Just for people that aren't familiar with this, when Gemma uses the phrase overcapitalizing, what she meant was, if you spend $50,000 to improve the house, but you only sell it for $40,000 more, then you've actually gone backwards $10,000, even though the value of the house has gone up. So a lot of people make that mistake. They don't know, well, if I do this landscaping, it's going to cost me 30 grand. Am I going to get 30 grand back? And this is something that we talk a lot about on the Australian Property Podcast with Pete, Chris and Amy, talking about the different things that do technically add value and some of the things that are very 50-50, like you don't know if you roll the dice. Like a good example of this would be, you put new stumps in your house, right? No one really sees stumps. No one really cares. They just assume that the house is going to stand upright. But that costs a lot of money. And so is it worth it?
And some things are really subjective. Like you might put in a beautiful kitchen that suits your taste and the next people hate it. I remember we sold a house. I think I've told you before. We lived across the road in the other one. It settled. They moved in that week and they ripped out the brand new ensuite that we had just put in to sell it. And I was like, oh, it was devastating. So I would also say overcapitalizing is not just you didn't get that money back, but you didn't get that time and effort back.
Yeah, definitely.
Because say if you're doing it yourself, organizing, whatever it is, like you want to gross up for, am I going to get this much extra plus all of this hassle, or should we just get rid of it? Is the timing more important than the effort?
Yeah, bloody hell. Yeah, because that's the big thing. I had a friend of a friend who spent his entire late 20s plus his 30s doing this strategy. He was a fantastic software engineer. He was like, why don't you just flip houses? I don't really like writing code anymore. So he basically just put all his money into flipping houses. And this was in the glory days of the last 20 years when you could get lots of loans. It was easy to get money and you could just go and go and go again. And anyway, long story short, he's actually back working again. And because he had at one stage, he had 5 to 10 houses on the go, really. And I asked him one day, I said, how much do you actually think you've made, per year? If you were to put it in comparable terms. He's like, to be honest, I've never done the math. But he said, I would guess it would be 20% before taxes and costs per year. And I was like, that seems like a really good return. However, the taxes, costs, and the time that he puts in are actually real things. So when you compare that to what the stock market would have done with an ETF, just buy and hold, it would have done, 10 to 15%, depending on when you looked at it. It seems like a lot less effort. But there are pros and cons to both strategies. And I think what we've tried to teach our community, Jam, is just that you should probably do both. You don't need to do one or the other. It's probably
both. You can always change your strategy like we did. We had the energy. We loved renovating. He had the skills. And that was a way that we actually built the foundation for our wealth, right? That's how we did it. So if you've got a skill set like that, it can be a huge leg up to do that type of stuff, but it might mean that, eventually you just get a bit over it and you change your strategy. Yeah. It's all about just doing what you can at the time and learning from it and then doing it better next time.
Actually, it reminds me, I spoke to a fellow who, for people that aren't aware, if you've got a free Rask account, you can just head to rask.com.au. And inside your account, you can actually book in for a free call. It's not like it doesn't cost it, like it's not a sale or anything. It's just a call. There's different options there for what you're interested in. And you can speak to one of our team. And I actually did one for you this week, Gemma, when you were recording a podcast. And the fellow was from Sydney, carpenter, and he's been looking for months and months and months to do exactly what this person's talking about. And he was so switched on, and he's a chippy, and he just understood everything. He understood index funds, he understood shares, he understood property. And he also was, importantly, he was actually really discerning in the way he went about it. Like he was like, I've been to like 50 auctions over the past 6 months. I would buy the houses, but the math just didn't make sense because it was too expensive for me to spend all the money on the costs and my time to actually make it worthwhile. He's like, I don't know how some of these people are making money. And so when I hear stories like that and I speak to people like that, I'm like, you've got it going on. Like you understand exactly what's happening. You can make a decision whether it's shares or property at a particular time or both.
And take the emotion out of it is what he's doing, because a lot of the time when people are renovating houses or making decisions, they're emotionally attached to that thing and they're excited about it from what they'll get out of it, not potentially it as an investment. So it sounds like he was making very, very smart decisions that are with an investor hat on, not like a lifestyle activity kind of.
Yeah. When emotions get in the mix is when you definitely spend too much or overcommit to things for sure. So that was great to hear. Okay, great. So we've answered some great questions. Super funds get fined all the time. Your money is safe. That's fine. But eventually you might be sick of it and you might make a decision to do something else, which is perfectly fine too. Cool. Matt asked about just getting started investing at 18, about dividends. You will be taxed if you earn income, and if you own shares, you're going to have to disclose that to your accountant. Robags asked about an investment portfolio for their niece. ETFs are fantastic, probably the best option over the long term for most people. But does it give you the educational lesson? Maybe you can roll it into an educational lesson, but I think at least try and explore the idea of some shares for some of the money to educate them on what a company does. Jacob asked a question about flipping houses, paying down a loan. They're two different things, but maybe they can work together. It's just about knowing the numbers. Gemma, you've got a book coming out soon. What's the name of it?
It's called The Money Reset.
The Money Reset. And when's it coming out?
It is coming out on the 27th of August. So I got the cover. I got the cover. I'm just waiting for approval for back and forth. So hopefully next week we're in Sydney. I can be like, yes, I've got the actual final cover.
Oh, wow. So would you have a physical book by then?
No, like the design.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's exciting. So many decisions to make. But the book, you can pre-order now. We'll put a link in your podcast player. It's also on the YouTube or in the YouTube description. You can follow Gemma on Instagram. You can follow rask.invest on Instagram. We'd love to hear from you. Please send us in the signs of wealth.
Yes.
You've got some, I think a beach house or holiday house is like that's opulent. Like that's like you have real money these days. Let us know what you think those are. What are those signs? Maybe they're small. Who knows?
And I'll go to Coles and find out how much a Viennetta actually costs. And then I'll be able to work out if you still need to be wealthy to buy it.
Okay. Go and do that boots on the ground research, Gemma. Well, Gemma Mitchell, absolute pleasure. Thanks for joining me.
I'll see you next week in Sydney.
Thanks for watching this video on the Rask Network. While you're here, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can get videos each and every day on business, finance, investing, and so much more.